most common presentation are menstrual disturbances, so prolonged and heavy and often very painful periods. So rather than a fairly normal 5-6 day menstrual cycle period, they might get incredibly heavy bleeding for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and it might be prolonged to 7. This bleeding month on month on month can then lead to a drop in the hemoglobin levels and anemia, which can be very tiring. They can also be very painful. Some women will bleed constantly and not have a cycle at all. They'll bleed for 30 days, 40, 50, 60 days.
WESN.
One of those days, it's one of those mornings. Wasn't necessarily going to lead with this, but let's get it out of the way. The reports don't necessarily paint a clear picture with regards to the motives and exactly what the situation around the event was. But the event is what it is. According to reports last night, a man and his 11-month-old son was shot dead in their bedroom. Doesn't necessarily explain what the killers were doing, if the baby was just in the line of fire or if it was intentional. But yeah, it's just one of those mornings. Now, there's a lot of talk about how they thought the community might be jealous. He was attacked before, and according to one family member, well, now the deceased father and grandfather, the same person, they, well, here's the quote. You know, if the police say, if you see something, say something. If you see something, say nothing, because this is what happens. So was he killed because of a personal issue with his neighbors, or was he killed because he said something? We don't know. And I mean, the report basically says, you know, his son's death was discouraging to people who wanted to report incidents. Police, quote, he's a witness, so in order for them to have nothing, they come and deal with the witness. Now, they didn't necessarily say witness of what. Well, at least I haven't found it, because I'm still hung up on the fact that an 11-month-old child was just killed to gun violence. You know, the mother now, they were apparently looking to move, but they didn't have any sense of agency to move. He was attacked before. I'm not sure how wise that decision was. I, of course, have the benefit of hindsight. Now the young lady has to live with the result. I don't want to say consequences. I'll say the result. And this is one of those things where, yes, the murder rate is down, and yes, we have to be happy that last year, approximately 300 more people lived that did not live. And you might say, don't be cynical, appreciate that. But I could go in the reverse. I could go the other way and say, so are you saying 300 plus murders is acceptable for a population of our size? Because last I checked, for a population our size, 150 murders is still high. compared to a lot of places around the world. And if you want to say I'm cherry picking what places I am comparing it to, then on some level, the answer to that would be yes. I am not comparing us to places that have high murder rates. I want to compare us to places that have relatively low murder rates, because arguably, if all life is sacred, that would be more reasonable, wouldn't it? And no, I don't expect Rome to be built overnight. That's the whole point of the conversation yesterday. Don't just arrest the situation, because you can arrest criminals all you want. That doesn't solve crime. What you do after the arrest, the criminal justice system doesn't just arrest and then. There's an and then. And a state of emergency arrests crime, essentially, suspends crime, puts a freeze, suppresses, puts a band-aid on crime. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, because philosophically speaking, the work of the police is the short-term measures to social programs and economic programs being the long-term measures. And you need both, because you can't wait 10 years while your population is being faced with violence like this. You have to put something in place so that the people of today can live to see the improvements of tomorrow. Because we're not talking about, oh, this is a natural disaster situation. This is the elements and nature, or some random virus or health. No, this is human beings hurting other human beings. And as much as yes, there are other factors that come into play. Even the war in Iran and what it does to the global economy and the global oil markets and the price of energy and how that affects us is having some indirect effect on our society, and therefore by indirectly affecting our society, it is indirectly affecting our crime situation. It could just be one more young man or woman saying life is too hard, I need to find a way, a better way for me. And since none of you care about me, why do I have to care about you? I think we underestimate the propensity of human beings to commit violence when properly motivated. And this is not about evil people. This is just about people who no longer have certain controls over themselves for whatever reason, in whatever way that is expressed. So yeah, 11-month-old. And on some level, it's not so simple to say, well, it's the police fault. That's kind of a gross oversimplification, right? This murder of a baby is the result of a society that can't get its act together. And that includes the police and the politicians and the public. And it's all of us. There's no one group that you could just pin something like this on. There's a whole lot of failures at multiple levels. Personal, societal, micro, macro, indirect, direct. But hey, what do I know? I mean, is no one else haunted by the fact that this child didn't even live to see a year? Through no fault of his physical health or any other factor like that. mean, 40 years seems like a short time to some people, right? It's a long time until you go, that's only 40 Christmases. That's only 40 birthdays. What's one birthday? 40 or something isn't that much. That's merely one class. How many schools have 4 classes on a year group? And then you go further and basically say, well, and this baby didn't even have one. One Christmas, no birthdays, and that's it. That is the end of his life story. No accomplishments. No memories beyond those initial first months. That's it. No true reflection of what he could have been. All right. There's a part of me that would love to just reflect on things like this because I feel as though we hear tragedy and psychologically speaking, we Trinbagonians can't handle it, so we just want to move on. And, you know, to be honest, I expect most of our population, psychologically speaking, ignores news like this. You read it once and then you move on. And a part of me understands that, but then a part of me thinks it's very convenient. As long as it doesn't happen to us, it's fine, let's just move on. What a shame. What a shame. Did you see the news? What a shame. But by the way, next week, blah, 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 blah. Moving on to the situation with Caribbean Airlines, the Chief Secretary, now apparently there's word that perhaps some in Carl's leadership is thinking to perhaps maybe shut down and sell off the airline. And the Chief Secretary is saying, no, Carl is a public transportation service and the economic benefits far outweighs balancing the finances. And I find that statement, there's a lot of truth in that statement and there's a lot of oversimplification and naivety in that statement. The question, of course, is what takes priority? Because Carl is much more than a public transportation service. And Carl, quite literally, cannot exist only on the basis of the social or societal good that it provides as a public transportation service, because unless the THA's budget's going to pay for it, I don't know if the Chief Secretary is quite aware, but the police can't even afford body cameras. So according to the government, how are we going to afford paying off a loss-making endeavor that is an airline? One of the most volatile businesses in the world is an airline. Car manufacturers were too big to fail. Financial institutions are too big to fail. Airlines might be one of the few things that the major governments around the world would let fail. It is that volatile. The costs are that high. The losses are not going to be small. One of the things with planes is not just the fuel cost, but the maintenance costs. And it's not just the maintenance cost, but it's the fact that every plane generally has a life cycle, and while the life cycle could be pretty long, at some point you do have to update, upgrade, change, move on. Now perhaps we're trying to operate an airline that's too big. Maybe it needs to downsize. The problem is, ironically, downsizing the airline doesn't really help the air bridge. In theory, the air bridge is better off not with smaller planes, depending, because these are prop planes. We moved from jet planes that were significantly larger, conducting the air bridge under BWIA, to the the Dash 8s. smaller planes, prop planes, much more economical. And now the ATRs are bigger, probably even more economical, more modern planes. But that's not enough to deal with the issues at hand. And I think part of the problem is the Chief Secretary is basically saying the benefits are too important to him and Tobago to give up. But he is not necessarily able to speak to the specific issues of the air bridge and provide any proposals to solve it. Now, he does, however, speak to a very important point. A very important point that almost makes our national airline as ridiculous as the government's crime policy. Our tourists don't come on CAL. Not only do our tourists not come on our national airline, which has the capacity to fly to Europe or to North America. No. Not only do the tourists not come on CAL, but we regularly go to foreign airlines and beg them to fly to us. Now, most island nations do this because they do not have a national airline. But oh, not us. We are potentially the only country in the world that I know of, and I could be very wrong about this, because I have not delved into this. I have not necessarily looked into this to say I know for sure this doesn't occur elsewhere. But I have not traveled necessarily to many places around the world. Only a few places I did travel to is America. And ironically, I went there with Carl. We supply tourists to America. I also went there on an American Airlines flight, an American carrier. But as far as I'm aware, American tourists, they don't necessarily come on CAL. The diaspora does. But our main tourism market is the European market. And we maintain flights to England, and yet England is not the main source of our foreign tourists. So we keep asking Virgin Airlines, and I can't remember the rest. And at times, I think we may or may not, I can't remember if we had British Airways. There's a British airline and a couple other ones. And we go to them begging as though we don't have planes of our own, as though we can't figure out a strategic plan to utilize our airline, as though we have such low expectations of ourselves. Well, the foreigners not going to come on our planes. They want to go on foreign planes, so let's get foreign airlines. Or, well, their business model could make the flight, but somehow magically, we can't manage to do the flights. Oh, we could fly. We could sell our slips in Heathrow and then decide to recommence operations to London. I think at one point it might have been Heathrow and Gatwick, I can't remember. And not necessarily do a feasibility study. We already sold the bloody slips. A legacy asset that we were fortunate to have. And then we want to go back and fly to the UK for what? Caribbean Airlines basically exists for the diaspora. That is not a way to make an airline profitable. We're not that big of a country. And the chief sec basically, he doesn't say it the way I say it, but I don't wish to, this is the quote, I don't wish to rant, but as a country we have historically been unserious, true, about tourism and the economic potentials of the travel industry. True, we have the regional airline. We own the regional airline. And yet, we don't act like a proper entrepreneur, fully utilizing his business and exploiting all the commercial opportunities that it might provide for the unique proposition of being the Caribbean airline. Oh no. No. We're much too small-minded for that, apparently. Because at this point, it's not one board or two boards. It's the life of our regional airline. It's almost as though we did this thing just so that we could have planes in the region. So we could, ooh, look at us, we're flying to other islands. But we're not actually trying to really push its profitability. And for an industry like the airline industry, the reason why they are so concerned about profitability is because COVID-19 could happen. You might be running a set of 787s and then something goes wrong and you have to ground your fleet. This is not the kind of industry where you could have low profit margins and anything goes wrong, you'll survive. Anything goes wrong, you'll go the way of Pan Am. We already technically have to restructure. And now I believe the unions, I think it's with regards to the airlines, is warning, don't be another Petrotrin. And it's not fully the fault of CAL itself. On some level, I don't know to what extent all of the boards throughout the history of CAL were following the directives of the government, as the government is, I believe, the majority shareholder, right? But it is ridiculous that the government will own an airline and then go to foreign airlines and beg them to fly to us. And then not market the island to encourage people to buy the bloody tickets to actually come. So when the airlines want to pull out, what do? We are like, deer in the headlights. I didn't expect this to happen. What do you mean I put in no effort and things don't work out? Because that's what tourism is in this country, you know. What effort is there is done in the most ridiculous, ludicrous fashion of foolish strategies, of small-minded, short-sighted, and not inspiring strategies at all. And outside of those few minor endeavors that are footnotes in nonsensical thinking, we then just have a, what do you mean I have to actually invest in this and put in work and effort? We're an oil and gas country. We're not a tourism country. We're not like the rest of them. That's probably one of the biggest jokes of all. The fact that we, the Caribbean island nation, twin islands, it's two islands, we take tourism so unseriously, and yet we own the airline. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? You know? That's like owning a grocery, and instead of getting your own food at cost from your own grocery, you decide to then go and shop at some expensive grocery and pay retail prices when you can pay wholesale for your stuff at your own grocery. That's like having your own car and refusing to drive it. You never drive it. You had to take taxi. Not just any taxi, airport taxi, everywhere you go. You have your own car. But now we don't need, our car not good enough. We need airport taxi. So, meanwhile, there's a whole situation with the nurses, and I'll try and be brief, because I'm more or less out of time at this opening salvo. The nurses, they have concerns about staffing levels. This is one of the reasons why I never had an issue with Edie Stewart and the Nursing Association. You do not hear, we want more money, we want more money, we want the money. What you hear from the Nursing Association is, there's not enough staff and we're being overworked. And he was the one that provided me the beautiful line of, the ones that are willing to do the work and are trying to keep things together are being held hostage. And one of the issues, of course, I can't remember. It's the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex. Apparently, they wanted to reduce the rate of overtime pay. And you might think, well, if they can't afford it, what are you going to do? Here's the problem. Overtime pay for nurses is a critical incentive to not be understaffed and to not have a situation where management will be content to sit on their rear ends and pay nurses overtime. Worse yet, if we're so concerned about people getting their fair salary, overtime is meant to be high for a reason. You are working extra beyond your limits. You need to be compensated for that. But more importantly, think about it on the flip side. For anyone that doesn't understand what the problem is that's brewing at Eric Williams, the problem is very simple. Do you want to have a nurse who is on their third shift in a row having to ensure you stay alive? Double shifts is bad enough. Think about the capacity for people to lose their cognitive abilities the more tired and fatigued they are. Somehow the medical profession has allowed double shifts in both nurses and doctors. It is what it is. But depending on the situation, if nurses are constantly working overtime, you can't tell me they get enough rest. Everybody needs rest. Everybody needs time to themselves and time to recharge. From waitresses to cooks to retail workers. So heaven help nurses who work in critical situations. Because if overtime now all of a sudden is cheap, we can't find other nurses. So we'll just pay these nurses overtime, but it's cheaper overtime. So we're not really having any loss or extra expense. So there's no incentive for us to solve the real problem, which the Nursing Association is calling out as a staffing shortage. Also, apparently, these decisions were made without much transparency or consultation. So the association is asking for Dr. Tim Gopi Singh to go. He is the person that allegedly made this decision. My thing is, if the authorities are not speaking, cannot account for an issue that the association is bringing up with that can directly impact with the quality of health care that is provided at this facility, then I will have to agree with the opposition leader that the government is ignoring a crisis. And it doesn't matter if they're doing anything behind the scenes. From the point of view as the public, they're ignoring it. And the last thing I'll say about this, Southwest Regional Health Authority head, Dr. Anand Chattergoon, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name, he is urging nurses to reflect on compassion and duty, basically saying, you know, basically, I guess, asking them to end it. I don't want to misrepresent him. But here's a quote. In our public health system, many of the patients you serve are exactly that, the poor, the elderly, the chronically ill, and those who have nowhere else to turn. For them, the care you provide is not simply a service, it is their lifeline. That's fine. I understand that sentiment. It is something that you must take into consideration. I don't know if I want, however, for the chronically ill to be taken care of from a nurse who's overworked, underpaid, overstressed, and is potentially 2 steps from snapping at somebody or making a critical mistake because their brain is just too fatigued. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a smart aleck on TV. I never did this job. Let's take a break. When we come back, good lady is here. Moving on to a more convergence, a political economic convergence, political economic criminal convergence, perhaps. Stay tuned.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Most common presentation are menstrual disturbances, so prolonged and heavy and often very painful periods. So rather than a fairly normal 5-6 day menstrual cycle period, they might get incredibly heavy bleeding for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and it might be prolonged to 7. This bleeding month on month can then lead to a drop in the hemoglobin levels and anemia, which can be very tiring. They can also be very painful. Some women will bleed constantly and not have a cycle at all. They'll bleed for 30 days, 40, 50, 60 days.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not going to do that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not
game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
And we're back here on talking about the WSN, the Connect Capital Show. Michael Small, joined with the good lady herself. And what we're going to touch on now has come up in the national conversation. We have gotten accusations from both parties on each other with regards to the source of their financing. And both decided to go straight to the top of concerns. That is to say, criminal money has made its way into our politics, which is technically news to very few people, right? But more importantly, it allows us to have a long-standing conversation to bring it back up again, one that you can argue is quite important, in part because it seems as though no one has any motivation to actually get it done. So to have that conversation, of course, the good lady Karen Shishera is here with me, former Minister of Finance, attorney at law, legal scholar, educator, and of course, talking point commenter.
Commentator.
Commentator. And English teacher.
No, I'm not at all. Actually, yes, today we're going to be talking about campaign financing, and it was just very curious or very coincidental that I had said to Sean much earlier this week that was what I wanted to focus on, and yesterday I read an article from the Transparency Institute dealing with that exact issue and some of the very real dangers and concerns about the lack of campaign financing. But let me start from the beginning. Because we see both sides, and that's what Sean has said, both sides make accusations against each other that funding for their campaigns and beyond their campaigns and award of massive multi-million-dollar contracts are made to people, to persons, entities, and individuals who have contributed significant sums of money to that party's success. So I want to start first with the Prime Minister's statement that she made in Parliament.
Okay, so yeah, this was quite a few days ago, I can't remember. It was in the middle of last month, I believe it is. So we're looking sometime before the 17th of March. This was one of the things she had to say, I believe, with regards to the People's National Movement. Let's run the clip.
Whilst that was happening, many in the PNM hierarchy fattened their pockets from their local drug mafia financiers, while the people of this country, our country, suffered. I say, Honourable Speaker, a short distance away from this building, the new blood-red Ballinger House stands as a gravestone to drug money, pedophilia, and theft.
Right. So, she's the Prime Minister. I'm trying not to say the word she because you're right, it is disrespectful. But the Prime Minister in the Parliament referenced the ills and serious criminal activities allegedly of the People's National Movement, and in particular, the building of the Ballinger House. I know she spoke about that, the Prime Minister spoke about that, and how were they able to finance it? And there are questions to ask. The reason why the Prime Minister was able to say what she said, even if it was not true, I'm not saying it's not true, but even if it were not true, and even if it were done with malice and vindictiveness and all of that, it is because in Parliament you have what they call absolute privilege from an action for defamation. So that the most that can be done is to send it to the Parliamentary Committee for Privileges Committee, and they have powers which go from giving an apology to the ultimate expulsion. But they do not have the power to bring an action, or any person who says that they have been defamed by statements made in the Parliament to sue you. And some people have very deep pockets. By the time they finish with you, they've wiped you out. So it's a very serious power. And as I said last week, the reason for that, I referenced a case, but the reason for that is the right that we enjoy as a democratic nation. Freedom of expression is held as a high regard, that the government and the legislators understand that even though persons may say things in Parliament and in court that may be wrong, may be untrue, and may be defamatory, They are there representing, in the case of a court matter, their client, and in the case of Parliament, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So there is a punishment, but it is not defamation. Now, why do I say that? Prime Minister was very passionate in what the Prime Minister said. And I suspect there are many people who agree with what she said. They may not have the proof, but they believe it. And that's what's missing, the proof. Who are the drug financiers? How much have they contributed to the PNM? How much has the Balizé house, which my understanding was that it was broken down completely, and I think
the original building.
The original building, and now it's going to house an archive and a library. But next door to that, on land belonging to the PNM, they own the land, they have constructed a 25,000 square foot headquarters and also a car park. There we go. Now, I mean, that is in the construction stage. I've seen pictures of it where it's more advanced.
So ironically, right, so I believe this is the latest one, right? This is courtesy Guardian. Now, if you look, they rebuilt, they knocked down the old, smaller structure. They rebuilt something which is technically bigger, right? Because this new building is a lot closer to the road. Reopened it as Balizé House. I know, Karen, that when you say that it was going to be an archive, it's making me wonder, is that intention still there? Because the structure on the left, the smaller but new structure, has been operating as the PNM headquarters for the last couple of years now. So I don't know what the dynamics are with the big building that is basically taking up what used to be the car park for Balizé House. Because the situations of the two buildings, as far as I'm aware, they are separate initiatives. Let me just put it that way, right? And the current Balizé House, not the building under construction, I believe was started and completed while that big construction project was still, I mean, they didn't even have, if we could go back to the photo from before, you'll see it there. The new building was more or less done while this is still steel frame. So, or maybe that might have been, we have a third photo, let's show the third, right. While still of steel frame, the new Balizé House was constructed. Competing initiatives, part of the question, ironically, you have to ask is not necessarily just with the financing of the first building, but you could actually legitimately now question, well, there are two. So did the raffle money go to the smaller one?
That's
what about the bigger one?
We haven't said where the money came from, yes.
We haven't said.